There have been a lot of trends over the years on YouTube, but there's one that managed to sort of fly under the radar when it came to the mainstream, despite it being one of the most profitable things to ever happen on YouTube, and that trend is the tight beat producer. If you aren't familiar with music production, or more specifically hip-hop, there is some background information needed, so we'll go over a quick TLDR. The hip-hop music production pipeline works pretty differently from most other genres. With things like rock or certain kinds of pop music, normally the artist or band writes and records their own instrumentals, but in hip-hop, the artist generally doesn't create their own instrumentals, and instead they purchase one from a producer. Whether they work with a producer directly or buy a pre-made one is up to them, but it's fairly rare to have a rap or an artist also be a producer. Because hip-hop producers are the ones supplying the instrumentals, they had to find a way to get their music in front of labels and big-name rappers, and this would eventually lead to the concept of the tight beat producer. Basically, when they make a beat, instead of describing it by the mood or genre, they describe it with an artist's name. So if somebody made a beat that sounds like something you'd hear on a Drake album, they would call it a Drake type beat.
My first name is Aubrey.
I see where you go with that.
Yeah.
That's the basic concept, but we'll get back to that later. The popularity of tight beats was like a flare burning as bright as the sun that fizzled out almost as quickly as it got started. But I think the story of their timeline and their influence on the music industry is an interesting look into how quickly things change in music. And I think it parallels a lot of the previous shifts that have happened, like how CDs and MP3s were phased out when new trends or technology came along.
The song swapping company is now in the top 50 list of most visited sites on the web, according to Media Metrics.
The exact origin of tight beats changes based on different accounts from different people in the time period, but it's generally agreed upon that the term was coined on a website called SoundClick. SoundClick is kind of like an online music retailer, forum, and news outlet combined into one. People went there to talk about all things music and also to look at up-and-coming artists or bands that people were reviewing. I spent like 4 hours clicking links on the Wayback Machine trying to find out when SoundClick started letting people license instrumentals for a fee. But anytime I tried to go back further than 2007 on their music licensing URL, it would redirect me back to the 2007 version of the site. So I can't be 100% sure, but I think it's safe to assume that this feature was added somewhere around 2005 to 2007, but it might be earlier than that. Then I started looking for the first time that somebody uploaded a file that was tagged with a tight beat label and came across an upload in March of 2007. A user named Mark Massey Productions uploaded a file that was labeled Beat Fort Minor type that cost $200 for an exclusive license. I'm not totally confident that this is the first tight beat ever made. In fact, it's probably not, but since the licensed music page doesn't appear on the Internet Archive before 2007, I think this is the best we're gonna get. Some articles and interviews that I watched made the claim that the trend started with people uploading Drake type beats to SoundClick, but I'm not convinced that's true. Drake didn't even start releasing music officially until 2006 and didn't get much mainstream traction in the US until 2009 when he released his So Far Gone mixtape. Considering that SoundClick was predominantly used by people in the US, I don't think the trend started with his music, but he did play a role in making it more popular later on. Anyways, this type of platform sort of helped to democratize music production because these lesser known producers were charging very low prices for their music and sometimes as low as $10. The general consensus on why this labeling of tight beats started happening was that it was a marketing tactic. People noticed that their music would get seen way more often if they included a popular artist's name in the tags or the title rather than a mood or genre, which kind of makes sense. There are way more people who are searching for popular artist names rather than searching for a genre or a vibe of a certain type of music. Just like with a lot of trends, SoundClick became oversaturated with people selling music licenses pretty quickly, so people started to look for other platforms to get noticed, and around the time of the late 2000s, beats started being uploaded to YouTube with a tight beat title. I spent an absolutely unreasonable amount of time looking for the first tight beat uploaded to YouTube, which is easier said than done. People can change their titles and description after the fact that the video is uploaded, and also YouTube's system for searching for old videos is complete dog shit. The earliest video that I could find was uploaded on October 7th, 2007, and it was a Young Jeezy and Gucci Mane type beat made in FL Studio. Again, I don't want to claim that this is 100% the first type beat ever uploaded to YouTube, but I almost went bald a second time searching for days for these videos, so I'm fairly confident that 2007 is the first year that type beats started getting uploaded to YouTube. If you look at the Google Trends data for the term type beat on YouTube searches, it seems to match up to that timeline because there were at least some searches for different artists in 2008. It's pretty unclear if there was one singular event or producer that was the driver for the crazy growth that type beats experienced in the 2010s. But to me, it seems like a lot of people noticed how many more views their beats would get if they used the type beat format, and it sort of just started snowballing as more and more producers started to do it. However, in 2014, when Fetty Wap came out with Trap Queen, it was found out that the beat from the song was found through YouTube, which sort of solidified type beats as a legitimate way to market music. It was the perfect storm of things mixed together that started a sort of type beat renaissance, if you will. Hip-hop surpassed rock music as the most popular genre in the US in 2017, and the internet was more accessible than it ever was, with YouTube already being the biggest website other than Google. On top of that, more and more people were able to produce music themselves because the cost associated with it was so low because you could just buy a laptop and some music production software and you would be good to go. Massive names in the industry like MJ Nichols, Cash Money AP, and Murda Beats have produced music for the biggest artists in hip-hop like Drake and Migos, but they all started out as fairly obscure type beat producers. This would also be around the time that the label Internet Money got started by a producer called Taz Taylor, along with a few other type beat producers like Nick Mira. If you don't already know about Nick Mira, he's the producer behind most of Juice WRLD's early production. And Juice WRLD being one of the biggest rappers ever, it's crazy that he got his start by working with producers who got their start by making type beats on YouTube. Even the song Panda by Designer was a type beat purchased in 2014 from YouTube, which ended up being a #1 charting song. The trend hit a crescendo in the mid-2010s with massive artists starting to browse YouTube to find beats for their albums instead of going the traditional route, and producers were making thousands of dollars left and right, and even labels started to turn their attention to them. But gold rushes could only last for so long, and the type beat craze would quiet down a fair bit over the next few years. To say that people's opinions on type beats are not exactly aligned would be a massive understatement. Ninth Wonder, who is one of the biggest producers of all time, got into an argument online with Taz Taylor and the BeatStars Twitter account about how generic type beats were, but sadly most of the tweets were deleted. The other concern that I think could be a big problem is that the value of producers has been diluted so much and conflated with people who just make beats. Labels and artists expect full productions at a fraction of the cost that they used to be just because of the abundance of beats available online. Nowadays, a producer might sell exclusive rights to a beat for a few $100s on YouTube, and if that artist who uses it makes it big, they won't see any of that success. On the flip side, there are some positives too. It helps unknown people get their music out there, and it also lets artists discover stuff that they may not have ever seen otherwise. I think a lot of the bickering online about it can be boiled down to the old wave clashing with the new wave, but I think there are legitimate reasons to be both in favor or against type beats. But regardless of what people think about it, by 2016 and 2017, the scene was completely inundated with people trying to grow their audience and make a career. Even I am guilty of participating in this, because in 2016, I was also uploading that type of content. If you look at the Google Trends data for type beats of popular artists, almost every single one follows the path of it spiking in the mid-2010s and then slowly declining going into the 2020s. Looking at the viewership of big producers on YouTube tells a similar story. If you look at their channels now, the amount of views they get on their beats has decreased by as much as 90% or more. Back then, you could easily get hundreds of thousands or even millions of views if the algorithm picked up your video, but now it seems like even producers with hundreds of thousands of subscribers are struggling to get even 10,000 views on a single video. I think this cycle is similar to a lot of other things in media, like late night talk shows or cop shows. Okay, well, maybe not cop shows, but you get my point. Late night talk shows became one of the most popular things on TV, and it seemed like every network wanted a late night show because of how many people were watching, but it eventually stagnated and there was an excessive amount of shows on the air and people just lost interest. You can look back to when dubstep became popular or how Soulja Boy changed music by using MySpace to promote his music, which died only a few years later. I think type beats undoubtedly changed how people think about music production, and it was definitely one of the biggest trends ever in music. They might even continue to be profitable and stick around for a while longer, but I think their heyday is most certainly over. Thank you guys for watching, stay safe out there, and I'll see you in the next video.